Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. You are listening to the second episode of the Train More, Play Less podcast. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Jason Garcia. The topic of interest today is going to be what is wrong with our youth baseball. Before all that, we want to create a community behind this whole podcast. So any questions, positive or negative, we want to approach in the very beginning of every podcast. And this is us encouraging you guys. We don't care if it's negative. We want to do things the right way. And we'll approach them. I mean, we're happy to approach them. And so I think, Jason, you had somebody bring something up about Americans team that you wanted to approach.
Yeah, well, first, like I said, I want to just thank everyone for giving us information, after the first podcast. Again, like Jared's saying, we want all the feedback, so positive, negative, we appreciate, both sides. But the question was, in the first podcast I talked about winning and that our program won, but not at the rate as the other programs because we didn't stack our team. So the question was, well, what do you call the Americans team in your program? Is that considered stacking a team? So I just wanted to, talk about the Americans program a little bit so everyone has an understanding of what the purpose is behind the Americans program. So in 2015, we stopped getting involved with our program stopped getting involved with the local tournaments as far as, USSSA tournaments, extreme tournaments, Triple Crown tournaments. And, the reason I just wanted to put our program in a better baseball environment. So we got involved with USA Baseball, and we started, taking our program to the Futures Tournament out in North Carolina. At that time, there was only a couple California teams that got involved in that tournament. Everyone else was still doing the local USSSA stuff and Triple Crown and Extreme Diamond Sports. So after we went out there with my 10U team, it was a 12U tournament. We went out there with my 10U team, and we did very, very good. And, I was approached by some of the staff out there at USA Baseball and, just gave us praise on how our kids were, trained, how disciplined they were and how they played the game. So when I came back from that tournament, I started getting a bunch of emails, from everyone across the country. I mean, 200 plus emails. And they were just asking, hey, how do we get involved with, Gamers Baseball and go to that tournament? We want to get involved, but our program doesn't go to that tournament. They go to the World Series USSSA and the Elite 32. We want to get involved in USA. So I was like, man, I'm telling all these programs, I'm, responding back to them, just letting them know, hey, it's just our program, and we just take our team out there. And so when I came back, I'm just like thinking, like, how can I get the whole country involved with that tournament if their programs are not doing it? So I, just thinking, and I'm like, well, why are we so worried about, what program is the best? Why don't we start worrying about making our country the best? So I came up with the Americans and, just started putting tryouts about, throughout the country and just saying, hey, listen, if you want to go to this tournament with our Americans team, we're going to pick the best talent throughout the country, put them all together, let the top kids throughout our country play together, make sure they're trained right, make sure they're doing the things right, and then we would take them out there and showcase their talents in front of the USA staff with the hopes that they get to fill their dreams of being on the USA 12U national team. So it's not, I was going out there to stack to say, top tier or Jason Garcia is the best coach. Mm-hmm. I was getting a bunch of information from other kids and other families, a bunch of questions asking, how do I get involved with this tournament? We can't get there through our program. How do we get involved with you? And I just opened up the opportunities and created a program within our own program to where I could get all the kids throughout the country involved and take them to that tournament. So we did it the first year, and we won the 10U, the 11U. The second year we got we're silver. I mean, we have had a bunch of kids play on the USA national team. We have had a bunch of kids move on to the finals for the 12U national team, and it's just been a great program. But what we do is we call that the Navy SEAL program, well, piece of our program. Where the expectations and everything are just a little bit different. The kids have to try out. Expectations are different. The way they train are different. It's just a whole different mindset if you get in our Americans program. And if you guys look at our Instagram or, you know, Facebook or whatever you guys follow us through, you'll see it. I mean, I highlight all the players on that team. You know, I'm not going and saying I'm the best coach or saying, you know, we're the best in the country or anything like that based off that team. It's more just, these are the kids that are involved. These are the kids that are playing on the national team. These are the kids making it to the finals. They're part of the Americans program.
Well, I mean, the big thing too is a lot of these kids, because I met a lot of these kids too, and they're dedicated to the training, right? And so I think a lot of people, and that question for me is, when it gets brought up, it's things aren't black and white. What we're trying to do is, we're putting the training first, but we're not sitting here saying, and I don't think this is what you're saying, right? I don't think we're sitting here saying we only want to train. Games aren't good. That's not what we're about. It's about getting better every day. For me, it's a lot of my losses have been my biggest wins. The message that you're trying to get across is it's not all about winning, because one, from a physical standpoint and a psychological standpoint, what are you teaching the kids if they win nonstop? Right? It's almost like throw yourself, if you're a big fish in a small pond, you're only going to be in that pond for so long, and all of a sudden you get bored of that pond. You got to throw yourself in the bigger pond. So that's a pretty interesting comment about that whole thing, which I see how that gets portrayed, but what do you see that's different from how you said expectations are different for the Americans. What's different about that versus, I would say, other kids?
Yeah, you know, in the regular kids and the kids in our program that are just in the gamers program, you know, they have their 2 practices a week, 2 tournaments a month. You know, that's the expectations, you know, for them. And that's good for them, you know, but the American kids are way different. You know, we're still playing games, but our focus is not going out and winning all these tournaments. Our focus is, these kids are really passionate about the sport. The parents are, they like to train, you know, they're just taking it to a different level. So our focus is, let's find the weaknesses in these kids, because we all have weaknesses. Let's find them and really work on turning them into strengths. And, you know, not wasting our time playing every single weekend, getting caught up with that local, you know, hype. Let's really take the time to make our kids in that program the elite. If we're going to say they're elite, then let's make them elite. Let's pick them apart. Let's find out, you know, what's wrong with them, and, you know, let's better them in those areas. So when they get to the next level, or we take them to these certain showcases, you know, they have the opportunity to make these teams. And it's just dedication. You know, there's just no excuses. Nothing's tolerated. So if they come in the program and we're telling them, hey, you have a certain amount of months that you got to do your arm care program, or certain months in the off season you got to do A, B, and C, they're doing it. If they're not doing it, there's no reason to be in our program. You know, I
think you're setting a level of standards for what you want to do, and I think that leads us into our topic of the day, which is what is wrong with youth baseball. And I think that you have different tiers, you know, within top tier and everything you're doing, where your Americans are elite. But then I see kids that are in here too, you know, that are just starting out, that then you'll look at them in 3 months and you're like, I didn't recognize this kid. The kid is way better. So let's dive into that topic, because there's some pretty interesting articles that came out that I think we're reading. And so I want to dive into the core issue. What is wrong with our youth as of right now?
The problem's not with the youth. The problem is with the people that are in the leadership positions. You know, so we'll talk about the coaches, right? Coaches, that's a leadership role. Talk about the parents. We'll talk about the people that are in charge of these tournament organizations, or, you know, the showcases. You know, these are, I mean, we could even talk about the people that are above, you know, USA Baseball. We'll talk about, you know, MLB Baseball, all the people that are higher than all of us at the upper levels of, you know, why is, you know, no one's taking the step forward to figure out what the problem is and then, you know, do something about it. As far as the coaches go, you know, there's a lot of good coaches out there. You know, I talk to, you know, coaches daily, and there's a lot of coaches that played way more baseball than I did, and even at a higher level. And it just goes back to, and I know you mentioned it in the first podcast, it just goes back to everyone's so concerned about what's going to happen to their money. You know, I talked to a coach about a couple of weeks ago, and he was trying to find out more about the train more, play less, and I just gave him the whole rundown on what we're trying to do with it. And he's like, man, you know, it's awesome, That's totally the right way. It's just, if I did that, all my families would leave. And if they left, then there goes my business, So the coaches there's a lot of good coaches out there. They're letting the parents dictate their programs because there's financials involved.
Well, let me ask you a question in that. Do you think it's expectations within the coaching not giving the parents the correct expectations?
The problem is there's just so many people that are running travel ball teams. So just for an example, if a kid came in here and I told him, hey, and how I look at it is the ball's in the parents' court when they're 6 through 12, right? Because there's so many teams. I mean, you could drive a mile from here and there's another program, right? So if you charge a certain price and they're not happy with that price or they don't want to pay money, they're just going to drive a mile from here.
Right.
And, Joe around the corner who is just a dad is going to pay for everything because it's just for fun for him, And then once the kids get older, 13, 14 and above, then I think the ball goes in our court because now you have to actually get an organization that's established to be able to do certain things with your kids. But I think that's the big issue is there's so many, nothing's regulated. So anybody could start a team, anyone, could charge, it's pretty much cutthroat. They could come in and say, we're not going to charge any fees. We could do, you come, I'll pay for all your tournaments. I'll fly you here. I'll do all this and that. And that builds the parents' egos. They feel like they're unstoppable. So every time when they go to another program and you say, hey, this is what we're going to offer and it's going to be at this price, they're like, no, because down the street they'll do it for this. So it's almost like it's like a bidding war, right? What are we going to offer this kid for him to stay? And, the coaches on the internet are trying to survive, right? These are guys that have created a business, off of youth baseball. And if they don't get players, if they're not doing what the parents want to do, then they lose those players. Now they're not getting their monthly fees and, there's a chance of their business going under. When I started this, when I changed my ways, I'm gonna tell you right now, when I told the parents, hey, this is the direction I'm going, because I'm not gonna lie, that first year that we talked about when we came out and started from nothing and then we were the top team for like the next 2 to 3 years. I started getting the hype. I started like, oh, you know what, this team's coming down. They think they're good. Screw it, let's go play them. Let's go smash them. And the values, everything, the reason why I came in this sport, I just put them. I wasn't even thinking about them until it was my wife who said, hey, listen, what you're doing is not fun anymore, so I'm not going to support you. You're doing what everyone else is doing.
Shout out to Sana for that.
Yeah,
you girl.
Well, and everyone talks about it, right? You need somebody in your circle who's going to hold you accountable. You need someone who's going to regulate your standards, and say, hey, this is what you're preaching, this is what you're doing, but you're not doing it. If you don't have that person next to you, you're going to get lost, and especially when you start becoming successful. And we were becoming successful, and it started getting to me, like my ego, like, oh, I'm the guy, and she had to pretty much regulate me and put me back in my place. And I said, you know what, you're right. And that's when I told my parents, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. I don't care if you guys leave. This is the way we're doing it. We're not playing a bunch of games. We're getting involved with USA. We're getting good baseball atmosphere. We're not doing all this hype stuff. And I think I had at least like two and a half teams of like the amount of players I've so 12, 24, probably about 30, 36 players that end up leaving my program. But that's what needed to happen because I needed to get the kids and the families in here that wanted to be here for what I stood for. So I wasn't scared to lose money. I wasn't scared, to start from the bottom. And I think that's what needs to happen on the coach's side to help out, solve this youth problem is if they feel it's the right way, then stand up for it. And guess what? If those families leave, let them leave. Because the more people, the more coaches that we get to stand up and say, hey, this is the right way. This is the way that we're going to do it. Everywhere they go, everyone's going to be saying that. But it's going to take people to be able to go against the grain and say, hey, no, this is what we're doing. There's values. We got to stand up for what's right.
And it makes sense. I'll go back to your comment about how you started getting ego. That's normal. Yeah. Everything, ups and downs. I mean, I was talking to one of my mentors yesterday who's a very successful real estate developer, and he says the hardest time is when things are going well. Because then I think, I start puffing my chest, I start getting comfortable. And a lot of people, I think the comfort level within their own kids is don't sabotage that. Look at actually the information that you're going through, because if anything, I don't care, there's no value I would put on putting a kid in this program, because they'll come out a better man. Right? You're not raising boys here. You're getting them ready for life. You're raising men. It's just very interesting, because I think it's and this is why I'm excited for this podcast and to get some community around this whole thing, because it's crazy to me that so many people are ignorant to the fact of what's actually happening within the youth. And I'm not talking baseball. I'm talking just guidance, right? Like if I had a kid who wasn't athletic at all, I would still put him in this program versus other programs I've seen. There might be other programs out there that are the same, principles as us, which we support, right?
Yep.
We're not saying it's just us, come to us. That's not what we're saying at all.
No.
We want to make sure, if I think, and this is, I think I'm speaking for you, but if every program could be your standards and you had a little say in that and you got no money, I think you'd have a smile on your face. It's not about that.
It's not about that. Like I said, if you've been in my program and the first 3 or 4 years, like I said, I was still a cop, and I worked my butt off on doing overtime and buying everything for my kids. They were in my program. It's not about the money. Whether people see, hey, we got this nice facility, they drive nice cars, that has nothing to do with me. That's nothing to do with this program. That's from me working 13 years in law enforcement, busting my butt, and my wife being successful in her business and just being disciplined enough to be able to save money to get in a position to where I had money put away to actually start a business, but like I said, for the youth side, it has nothing to do with that. For me, it's just making sure that we do things right, because it is a great sport and it teaches a lot of life lessons, but none of that's going to happen unless we step out, and that's the problem with the coaching side. The coaching side, like I said, there's a lot of great people out there. I love learning from a lot of these coaches out there, the baseball side, but when it comes down to taking care of the issue, they're so scared to, go against the grain because they don't want to lose their business. But like I said, we get more coaching out there that's going to step up and be that leader role and say, hey, listen, we're not doing this anymore. We really need to get our sport back. Then now parents everywhere they go, they're going to hear the same stuff, and then the parents are going to have to change their ways. The parents are only doing this because we've allowed them to do it. This just didn't happen where the parents all of a sudden said, hey, listen, I'm going to walk into the program and I'm going to dictate what's going to happen. Or my kid's good enough. Because I'll tell you, if you have a good kid in travel baseball, all these parents walk around like you owe them something. You should see, I'll get people that come and walk in this door every single day and, oh yeah, this is my kid. He's played for this program, this program, this program. And, we've never had to pay, and we just show, they already have that about them because the programs have let them have that type of ego. It's like, oh yeah, he's a stud. Just bring him in. He's not going to pay anything. He could show it when he wants. He's going to help us win. Well, that's allowed the parents to walk around with that mentality. So if we could change in the coaching side, I believe the parent side will change on their end, because no one's allowing them to act like that. Everyone's equal when they walk in. I don't care if you're entry level. I don't care if you're, elite. Everyone has the same expectations when you walk through this door. The dues are the same, expectations are the same. And guess what? If you are a stud, especially like in our program, you're held to a higher. We want our best players to be our hardest workers. Because what happens is all the kids that are underneath them, they coach themselves. We don't even have to get involved, right? When they see that stud and he's like, wow, that kid's the best and he works the hardest.
Standards.
Everybody just falls in place. Now we don't even have to do anything. It just happens. But when you get these kids that walk in here, these are studs. They wear their uniform differently. Their expectations are differently. Now it's hard to keep all the entry level kids on point when you start preaching standards. Also, like, why am I going to do all that? Such and such doesn't do it. So now it's hard to create that culture. So that's, like I said, I think the parents will fall back into place once the coaching throughout the country could, again, set a standard and say, hey, listen, these are the expectations. If you don't want it, then go somewhere else. But the more that we get on board, every time they turn a corner to go to a new program, they're going to hear the same stuff. And that's the goal,
100%.
And, just to go into...
well, let me touch on that real quick, because this is to parents. I've seen this happen over and over and over. The quote that I love the most is, hard work will beat talent when talent doesn't work hard. ego is the biggest aspect in that. If the ego is separated from all that, you will always work hard. You will have gratitude. You always have a mindset that you're saying, hey, I want to get better.
And I don't think it's the kids' egos. I think it's the parents' egos. And then the parents' egos, then, you know, the kids start, you know, walking around like the parents. Because I'll tell you right now, and everyone, I mean, that's a big thing about me. You know, it's, oh, he's not approachable, or, you know, he's tough, or whatever it is. No, it's just there's standards here, right? And for those best players, those good players that are out there, if you go to any university or any good high school, that's exactly what they're going to tell you when you walk in. They're going to expect you to be the hardest worker. I've had kids in here that are studs, that every program around here would you know, give them a full ride and pay for all their stuff just to be there. I've pretty much let them go from my program because they weren't my hardest workers, right? They just felt because they were the best, they could show when they want to show. They could come to whatever practice they want to come to. They could wear their hat differently than everyone else. They could wear different gear here. You know, when we come and train here, we wear all our top tier gear, right? We're a family. We look the same. No one's different. We've had people wearing different stuff, and it's when you approach those kids and you let them know what you're trying to teach them. Yeah, you're tough on them. Hey, listen, you're the best kid. You got to do things right, because then everything's going to fall into place. You know, you're the leader here, right? And you're trying to teach those skills to the kids. The parents get all upset about it. Oh, why are you pointing my kid out? And then they leave and they're all angry, and they can't look at what you're actually trying to teach that kid, because those are the things they're going to hold them to. You know, if their level of play stays the same and they go to, you know, big time schools, you know. And it's just the parents. I think the parents walk around like that, and they think that their kids have already made it, and the kids feed off of it, and then they start walking around like that, you know. But again, we go back to the leadership role, which I mentioned. The parents have to do a better role in guiding their kids. They have to they got to humble them. They have to let them know, hey, just because someone's telling you that you're good right now at 12 or 13 doesn't mean you're going to be the best at, you know, 14s and 15s. You have to keep working hard. It's a process. And you know, you could wake up one morning, it could be taken away from you. You know, let's not walk around like with a big head. Let's just be humble. Let's be, you know, thankful for where you are right now, but there's still a lot of work ahead of you. That's just not being, you know, expressed to the kids anymore. You know, the parents are walking around, and now the kids feed off of that, you know. But like I said, there's a lot of stuff that goes into play with, you know, the question of what's wrong with travel baseball. You know, like I said, you have the parents, you have the coaching. Then you have the tournament organizations. You know, these are all organizations that they have no rules. You know, you could pitch your kids, you know, as many innings as you want. You know, the environment, they let the parents drink and get totally, you know, wasted, and, you know, act crazy at the fields and fighting coaches. I mean, I've seen coaches and parents run after an umpire and jump an umpire in the parking lot. I mean, it's crazy, right? And what their thing is, oh, we're hosting tournaments, you know, we're for the youth. We want to give them a good environment to play in and have fun, and all the stuff, all the standards that they're saying they're about, you know, nothing's happening, you know. And again, when you talk to these tournament directors and you say, hey, why don't we put some rules on pitching? Why don't we put some rules on these things? They don't do it, because then those teams that want their kid to pitch all the time to win, they won't go into the tournament. So again, it just comes back to the money, right? We can't do things right, because then we won't get teams in our tournament, which then we won't make money. And it's never ending. So it's just, everyone's, like I said, it's not about the passion of baseball. It's about the passion of how much money can I make, you know? And then we go back to all the showcase stuff. You know, if kids go in these showcases when they're 6th and 7th grade, I mean, of course the parents are going to walk around and, you know, have this whole hype of, you know, my kid has to do this and that so he could go to these showcases in 7th and 8th and verbal, you know, to whatever school. I mean, what's a verbal? You know, that's nothing. It's nothing. I mean, you know, but that's the hype. That's the stuff that's being created by these organizations, and then the parents buy into it without doing research. You know, the article we just looked at with MLB now getting involved, it pretty much just talked about in there that MLB has noticed that the youth system is broken, and there's a lot of, you know, there's third parties involved that are, you know, doing all the scouting stuff like we just talked about, all the scouting organizations that are charging all this money to gather data on these players, and people feel, or families feel, that this is part of their kids, that they need to do it for their development to be able to play college or play pro ball. And MLB has said, hey, this is getting out of control. We need to get involved, and we need to fix the issue. Now, it didn't really say in that article what they were actually going to do, but I know they said that they're going to try to get a league going for the top, I believe it was juniors or seniors, and just make sure that all their information, all the data on these kids, all that information is put in a certain spot.
I'm curious to see what MLB is going to do from their standpoint.
I don't know if they're getting involved because they see, hey, there's a source of money here that we need to get our hands on, because everyone else is making money off of it. Or if they're saying, hey, this is an issue, we're going to get involved and make sure things are ran right through the high school process for these kids going, to college or to the pros. But I hope they do that, and I hope they get involved with the youth, and really start, regulating, what's happening, and I think that's really how we're going to, change the sport. But my biggest thing, that I always tell people all the time, because I always say, all these programs, the business plan behind all these programs is lure the youth in through the older kids. So let's show families that we've got all these kids signed to D1s or colleges or pro, and then based off that, we'll get all the local youth to come in our program, But when I look at all the programs, I always tell the families, just do a little research. First off, find out all those players that they're saying that they got scholarships. Go find out actually how many of those kids actually grew up in that program, or if they were just bought or borrowed for a certain tournament. That's one, avenue to start looking in. The next one is, why do we have our best coaches, or why does all the MLB, all these people want to invest their time in the older kids? Shouldn't we have our best people with the younger kids? This is when we develop our future, right? When you have a kid, it's like, hey, you have a certain period of time to teach this kid everything you want to teach him. After that, you missed a window, right? So it's like all these programs, we're just going to put dads with our kids from 8 to 12, and then once they get to 13, then we'll put our elite coaches with them. That's like, I don't understand it.
It's like building a house with a guy who's doing the framework who has no idea what he's doing, and then the interior designer is the guy who knows what he's doing, and the house is going to fall apart. And again, this is the type of stuff that it just bothers me. Like I said, I'm listening to how people talk, and I'm like, that makes no sense. You have kids, right? When are you supposed to be training? When they're babies, right? You're prepping them when they're babies, and how you want that kid to form. You plant a tree in straight, it's going to grow straight, right? You plant a tree crooked, it's going to grow crooked. So it's like, and I just don't understand the whole thing behind, the families. I don't understand the approach with a lot of these coaches. But like I said, we're taking the step forward. We're going against the grain. There's probably a lot of people out there that are hating me right now. Comment, people, all of you, every single person.
It's but again, it's not. You hear me say I'm humbled. I tell people all the time. There's coaches out there way better than me. They've played way more baseball. It's just I see that there's a problem, and I want to do things right. And that's really what we're doing here, and we're getting involved with other programs and talking with other coaches and giving them, going back to the word development, actually developing. Don't use the word development to get people through your doors. Same thing with grassroots. Everybody wants to say, hey, we're starting a grassroots program. Well, if we're going to do grassroots and we're going to develop, let's actually put it in play. And that's what we're doing here. We're actually starting really grassroots, really development that, anyone could come here. We're going to train them. We're going to guide them. We're going to do the things right, and get people involved throughout the country that want to do it. And let's say, hey, let's build our own governing body. Let's do our own stuff. Yes, we're going to have to play in travel tournaments because that's what's offered right now. But we could have our own rules, even though we play in those tournaments. We don't have to follow the rules. We don't have to pitch our guys 10 innings in a weekend. We have our own guidelines, and let's just follow them. We lose. It's not a big deal. but we know that we could sleep at night, that we're taking care of our youth. And then also when we go and talk with these, coaches and stuff about our kids, we can let them know, hey, these kids are not overused. Like, these kids have standards, their expectations, they followed all this stuff. They're not overused. We've taken care of these kids. And I think that's more appealing down the road, to these D1 and pro coaches down the road, is that because they're investing money in these people. They don't, in these kids, they don't want a kid that's going to go out there in the first year blow out,
100%.
So that's the big thing that we're doing now. And like I said, whether, people agree with what we're doing, I'm going to continue to do it, because I believe in it. And, we have a lot of programs. Like I said, there's, at least 24 programs right now that are emailing me and want to get involved and start doing things right and just build a network and try to get baseball back.
We are live every single Monday for this podcast. Next episode, we're going to have some guests being brought on, so we'll make that announcement on that. The Top Tier Gamers website, TrainMorePlayLess.com website will be launching this week. We're going to put a little comment section on there where it's a registration form where you guys can put questions, any comments you guys have for us, and we'll see you guys next Monday.